I'd like to share a bit of debugging and discovery that I just ran into while working on this diagram. Um, Take a little bit of context maybe to set up what I'm trying to do here. The diagram in question is intended to become a tool to help a group of people do some business analysis, and in particular to discuss differences in assessments of aspects of their business. So details that I'm trying to make customizable in the diagram include how we label the nodes, and how we add survey questions in the relationships between nodes. For example, the relationship between staffing and customer for this particular configuration has a question or an assertion. Are staff are customer focused? The idea is that somebody is going to agree, disagree, strongly disagree, and then perhaps provide evidence for their assessment of the relationship between staffing and customer. And there's a related arc about how customers are influencing staffing, and residents and visitors can easily get the help they need when they need it. So that's an example of the relationship going the other direction and how the description lays out. Now, of course, as we're looking at it, you can see I've got some layering things going on that make that less than ideal. But what I was really debugging is that I cannot close this detail. This one I can open and close. This one I cannot close. I was able to open it, but I couldn't close it. If I refresh the drawing, it goes back to the default state of being closed. Let's go back up there. But I open it, cannot close it. And there's something funny that as I keep clicking on it, this is getting highlighted. That actually is a clue, but I only know it's a clue because I've already done the troubleshooting. I'm just trying to recreate what my troubleshooting looked like. So let's have a look at what this object is. I'm going to use the browser inspector to try to understand more about what's happening here. So I two-finger tapped on here on my laptop's trackpad on the detailed text, and from the menu selected the inspector. So here's the details. The summary is that 1 to 2 arc, so the naming there, this is node 1, this is node 2, and the arc is going from 1 to 2. So that's the gesture that we've got in that name. That summary is here, the blue highlighting you can see, and the details show up below it. So it's embedded inside of a foreign object, and you'll see that the foreign object has a larger expanse, and the layering artifact that I mentioned earlier, and the fact that this one gets highlighted when I click the details is a clue. So let's go look at the other edge. Let's see, this is from where the tail is 1, the head is 2. These IDs are named carefully. Here's the edge that has the tail is at 2, coming back to 1. So let's expand that one and look at its foreign object. And right there, I can now see some of what's going on. There's overlap in the foreign object is covering the details. Here's the summary. Here's the summary. That's the part I click on to get that little triangle in the arc from 1 to 2. And the foreign object, which houses the label for the arc from 2 to 1, that foreign object is overlapping the summary. So when I'm clicking there, I'm actually ending up clicking on this object instead. So let's go manually close this. If I delete that tag in the inspector, it switches that to being closed again. Let's have a look at that summary. Here's the summary object, and here's the foreign object, and look at that. The foreign object does not overlap when the when the label from 1 to 2 is closed. But as soon as I open it, it repositions that thing, and now the foreign object covers the arrow. So now I know what the problem is. I have my work cut out for me figuring out how to fix it. If I scroll down to where I have defined the edge, you'll see there's some complexity in how I compute these edges. I don't care to dive into all of the detail, but here's where I set that foreign object and set the details in summary. And these calculations, the x and y of the foreign object and its width and height, are computed dynamically and embedded within the path. I think my solution needs to extract that foreign object into a separate collection so that all of the labels end up above all of the arcs. But that's going to mean that the calculations I'm doing to place those foreign objects are going to I'll either have to duplicate the calculation in another tool, or find a way to share those calculations between this component that draws the edge and another component that will draw the labels.